So Tina's going to give a little background on this, but I just want to first direct you to we may need to limit comment times depending on the number of participants, but it doesn't look like there are too many right now. We'll have online folks will call on you and then we'll unmute you. So I'm going to mute you, Doug, right now because you're unmuted. And then we will give you time for a comment. You can turn on your video or not. Please raise your hand for the online to get in line for the commenting. This is the first part of the comment period for the removal of the USS Ward Gun, and this is the first time that the Capital Area Architecture and Planning Board have gone through the rules for a removal request for a commemorative work on the Capitol Mall. So we appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as we move through these rules the first time. Tina's going to give a little bit of background and then talk a little bit about today's process, and then I'll be back to remind you of what today's focus is on. Really, today's focus is not on if the USS Ward Gun should be removed or should stay on the Capitol Mall. It's really focused on does it meet the criteria in subpart 6 that Tina will highlight here in a moment, and then I'll help remind everyone that that's really our focus today. Does it meet the criteria in subpart 6 that CAP board staff and the board determined it did at our last meeting in September? And this is a check-in to make sure that we got that right. The next steps after that, after this comment period, is the written comment period continues through January 7th. Then we will compile all the comments and bring them to the board on January 28th. Then it'll move from the board to the Commemorative Artwork Review Committee, which will hear the comments in this period, as well as the next comment period, which will likely take place for the month of February. The month of February comment period will focus on the question of should the gun be removed or should it not be removed. And then we'll bring all those comments to the Commemorative Artwork Review Committee. They'll hear all the background on the USS Ward Gun. And if they decide, then they would forward it to the board for a decision. We expect a decision by the summer of 2025. With that, I'll turn it over to Tina, who's leading the process for the removal of the USS Ward Gun. And thank you all again for being here today.
Thank you, Eric. So my name is Tina Chimozu. I am the 2024-2025 Planner Fellow at the CAP Board, and I'll be sharing a brief background of the USS Ward Gun application. So beginning with the background, the history of the Ward Gun. So this is a Second World War memorial that sits on the south edge of the Lower Capitol Mall, west of the Veteran Service Building, near 25 12th Street West. This large gun from a World War I era Navy destroyer fired on and sank an enemy vessel in the very early morning of December 7, 1941. The crew was comprised of naval reservists from Minnesota. After the war, the United States Navy agreed to loan the gun to the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs with the assurance that the state properly maintained it. The gun was installed on the state capitol grounds in 1958. The gun is owned by the United States Navy. Application to remove the USS Ward Gun. So on August 19, 2024, the CAP Board received an application from Randall Dietrich, who is here with us tonight, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum, for removal of the USS Ward Gun from the Capitol Mall. The application can be accessed via the CAP Board website. The CAP Board is currently processing this request according to Minnesota Rules 2400-2703, subparts 6, 7, and 9, which can be accessed via the Reviser website. For the request to be reviewed by the board, it must meet one or more conditions from the Minnesota Rules 2400-2703, subpart 6. CAP Board staff reviewed the application and found that it meets Minnesota Rules 2400-2703, subpart 6, condition C. I'll now go to a review of the rules. So the rules in reference for 2400-2703 subpart 6 state that conditions for modification or removal of an existing artwork. The board must consider requests for the modification or removal of an existing commemorative artwork if one or more of the following conditions apply. So in this case, the applicable condition is condition C, which has been highlighted in bold, which states that the artwork has faults in construction and requires maintenance such that the Department of Administration is unable to properly care for or store the artwork. I'll now show images of the current condition of the artwork. So this public hearing is being held to gather input on whether conditions in the Minnesota rules that have just been stated have been met for the board to consider the application to propose removal of the USS Ward Gun from the state capitol mall. Again, condition C states that the artwork has faults in construction or requires maintenance such that the Department of Administration is unable to properly care for or store the artwork. So next steps following this public hearing. Currently, we have an ongoing public comment period, which Eric mentioned, which opened on December 3rd and will run all the way to January 7th at 4:30 p.m. And after the public comment period closes, then CAPOT staff will prepare a summary of comments and a recommendation to the board on whether conditions or the criteria in Minnesota Rule 2400-2703 subpart 6 have been met for the board to review the application. This recommendation or summary will be presented at a public board meeting that will be held on January 28, 2025. At this meeting, the board will vote on whether conditions have been met for the application to be reviewed. If the board votes yes, then the applicant will be notified and the process to review will start, including additional opportunities for public comment. The next public comment period will address the question whether the USS Ward Gun application meets the criteria for removal from the Capitol Mall or not. And the dates for this public comment period will be communicated right after the board meeting takes place on January 28th. So, to today's public comment, public hearing. If you're in person, you will be called upon. You can raise your hand and you'll be called upon to make a comment. And when it's your turn, please come forward to the commenting table. And then if you would like, you may state your name and your affiliation with the USS Ward Gun application, if any. If you are making a comment virtually, then you can raise your hand. On screen, I have an image of how you can raise your hand, and then you can unmute yourself and make a comment. And if you're logging in using a mobile phone, you will also, in order for you to raise your hand, you have to click the three dots on the lower part of your mobile screen, and then that will take you to the portal where you can raise your hand. After you're called upon, you can unmute yourself and speak. And with that brief background, we're now ready to begin our public hearing. We'll be alternating comments from our online participants as well as in person. We will begin with our in-person participants. You may raise your hand to speak and we'll call upon you. Thank you.
Tina, I'm just going to jump in here quick. This is Eric again, the Executive Secretary of the CAP Board. Just want to let you know that we're going to ask you to try and limit your comment today to 4 minutes so we can fit everyone in this time frame. And we'll be timing once you begin your comments. So go ahead and start with the in-person.
Thank you. So I have a list of names of participants before me. I could call upon each one of the names that are on the list, or sure, please go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to enter this public hearing. My name is Brooks Berg. I'm a retired Navy captain. I serve in the Submarine Force, the United States Navy. I also volunteer currently at the Dr. Harold C. Deutsch World War II History Center as a member of the World War II Roundtable. I also work with Randall in a limited fashion to work on restoration up at the Little Falls Museum area. The USS Ward Gun is an artifact that deserves and demands better protection from the elements. It is a hugely valuable piece of artwork, as I see it's being called here, to the state of Minnesota. Randall Dietrich, as the executive director, is here, and I know he would be a proud owner of this should it be decided to transition it away from the Capitol Mall area. Randall recently hosted a meeting online on December 16th for commemoration of the Battle of the Bulge with noted author Alex Kershaw, who wrote a book about the subject. Randall's such a enormous proponent of Minnesota history that he pointed out two Minnesota veterans that were featured in the book prominently by Alex Kershaw, the author. And this is the type of work that Randall envisions for the museum as the owner of this gun. This gun's been exposed to the extreme weather conditions of Minnesota for more than 60 years. It's hot, it's cold, it's icy, it's next to a roadway with salt and potassium and everything else. If it's allowed to sit out there, you showed pictures of what it looks like now. I can't imagine what it's looking like underneath that paint. Being a Navy veteran, I know that rust is insidious and attacks everywhere all the time. Not being a conservator, I'm just an engineer that served on submarines. You see rust like that, you get nervous. If we don't do something in the right manner to preserve that gun will probably not be around too much longer, perhaps. So we need to take care of it. And I don't think painting over rust is a valuable solution, or a solution that this valuable piece of a Minnesota history deserves. I think painting over it just paints over the problems instead of addressing the root cause of the problems, which is galvanic cell corrosion and some other things that are going on there. So if a viable solution is being presented by removing this gun from the Capitol Mall, where it could be properly conserved and displayed, I know I've seen it many times in the last couple of years here. It's not plainly visible to people that aren't exactly looking for it. And so if you're out there and you don't know exactly where to go, you're not going to find it, in my opinion. Placing it in a museum with other hugely important Minnesota artifacts like this, where people actually go on purpose to see something like this, makes sense to me, and probably to a whole bunch of other people. Thank you for allowing me to speak my piece.
Thank you for your comment.
3 minutes and 32 seconds.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone online who would like to make a comment? Okay, we'll proceed to the next person, to our in-person participants. Anyone else would like to make a comment? Please come forward. May state your name?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the time here, Tina, to speak to the committee on this important topic. My name is Bill James. I am the area president for the Navy League of the United States for the Upper Midwest, encompassing all of Minnesota, as well as the Dakotas, Iowa, and parts of Nebraska. The Navy League of the United States is a time-honored citizen-led nonprofit association that was formed during the Teddy Roosevelt administration. Our mission is to educate, advocate, and support on behalf of the active duty and veterans of the United States Navy, Marine Corps, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the merchant services. So we are the citizen-led team that focuses on kind of the water team, if you will. So looking at the history behind the Ward and particularly the gun that is on the mall here, it is our concerted belief that we need to preserve this artifact long-term so that future generations can take advantage of understanding the relevancy and importance of the history that was involved with the war during World War II. Obviously, Randall has got a great plan for a brand new museum up in at Camp Ripley, and it's a perfect location to move this gun to that location, restore it so that it can reside in a safe, secure, better environmentally controlled area so that future generations to come can learn about the history and the background and the relevance and the importance of this important military artwork. So as the representatives for the Department of the Navy and Marines and Coast Guard here, we'd like to have continuity of supporting not only the mission of the armed forces involved, but also the history and legacy that goes along with their great past. Where the gun sits today, obviously it's challenged due to the environmentals, other structural support issues, and it would be a real travesty if it continued to deteriorate to the point where it would have to be removed and obviously scrapped out. So we think it's a great moment in time here to pick up this artifact, get it professionally reconditioned, and then put it into a great brand new museum so that future generations can enjoy and visually learn about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone online who would like to make a comment? All right, we'll proceed to the next person participant. Let's go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Paul Storch. I'm a consulting object conservator. And at one time I worked for the Minnesota Historical Society and was involved with actual hands-on work on the Ward gun. And I submitted 3 documents to the CAP board that outline the history, the maintenance history of the gun since at least 1958 through well, my active work on it was 2009, and then there's a report from MHS dated 2015. So you can get to the actual details from that. I was contracted by Randall Dietrich earlier this year and completed a current condition report to recommend conservation recommendations for the gun in February. So I'd just like to read my conclusions from that. As documented in the condition report submitted to the Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum in February, the Ward 3 gun currently on outdoor display is actively deteriorating, resulting in continued metal losses and disfigurement. This is evident in the various paint loss areas which have exposed the underlying metal to active corrosion. Active corrosion of iron alloys, which the gun is primarily composed of, is indicated by flaking metal surfaces, yellow and orange corrosion products, and rust staining on the painted surfaces. All of those indicators are present on the gun, including relatively large areas of metal loss on the recoil tubes, which have exposed the interior springs. And as was previously mentioned here, the current location of the gun is exposing it to aerosolized sodium chloride salt particles from road salt, which are driving the corrosion reaction. The best course of action to preserve the USS Ward Gun and to prevent further alteration of this significant historic object is to remove it from outdoor display and install it in a controlled indoor display environment.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Do we have any raised hands online to comment? Proceed to the next in-person comment.
Tina, if there aren't any in person, I think we could kind of go down the line here. We could ask, I'll just kind of go down the line here and ask folks online if they want to make a comment. So I'm going to start with you, Anna. Let's see. How do I unmute your mic?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Anna, would you like to make a public comment?
No, thank you, but thank you for the offer.
All right, great, thank you. All right, Bill Strusinski, would you like to make a public comment? Looks like you're still muted, Bill. There you go. Now we can hear you, Bill. Would you like to make a public comment?
Yes, thank you. Bill Strusinski, and the Ward Gun was having issues when I was Commissioner of Administration back in 1978 with the restoration. We couldn't get funds to restore it, keep it appropriately conditioned. So I think this is a great opportunity to get it reconditioned and to relocate it to someplace that will mean a lot more visibility for everybody. Suffice to help educate the world as to the importance of that artifact. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for your comment. All right, next up, let's go with Daryl. Daryl, would you like to make a public comment? You're currently muted. You'll need to unmute yourself. Thanks everyone for the technology here. I think you were, there you are. Now you're unmuted.
I just joined the meeting to listen. There's nothing that I'd really like to add. All of my points have already been made by other people that are much more expert on this subject than me. So thank you for letting me listen in.
All right, thank you for attending, Daryl. All right, David, I'm going to skip you unless you are interested. Doug, would you like to make a public comment? You'll need to unmute yourself. You're currently muted. There we go.
Hi, Doug here. I'm not too much to add. I'm really excited to see the Ward Gun restored and put in a place where it can be saved and shown to future generations. I think where it's at right now is detrimental to it, and happy to see this process move forward.
All right, thank you, Doug. All right, and Lindsay, will skip over you as well. Nick, you are currently muted. Would you like to make a public comment?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Stefan Osman, would you like to make a public comment? You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Maybe your Teams is not working. I'll try and see if I'm typing you in the chat here, Stephen. You could make a comment in there. Um, we still can't hear you, Stephen. If there's anyone else in person, we can take comments. Otherwise, we're as CAP board staff, we're going to just be available here till 4:30 in case someone is late arriving due to the weather or will be arriving online. So we just want to be available.
We have one in person.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the time to speak. Gary Krauberg. While I'm a combat deployed veteran myself, I really want to speak more on behalf of my father, who was a World War II vet that served in the Pacific. Maintaining the condition and repairing what we've lost already and rebuilding this would be a high priority to my dad, who appreciated going to the museums and seeing the equipment and things from when he served. And so I really think, the paint to me isn't such a big deal, but the bit where the metal is deteriorating and some of the smaller pieces of the springs and some of the other parts that can't be replaced or would be significantly expensive, that has me very concerned. So I think this is a good thing we're doing, to look at this and then to move it to the Camp Ripley where so many other people could see it. I think is good. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We do not have any other comments in person. So as Eric mentioned, we will be here until 4:30 in case we have other people who would like to make a comment between now and then. But in the meantime, whilst we wait, I'll also just share my screen for the people who may have joined us later in the meeting, just to sort of go over what the next steps after this public hearing will be. So once again, for our participants who have just recently joined us, currently we have a public comment period which opened on December 3rd and will close on January 7th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. After the public comment period closes, CAP board staff will prepare a summary of comments and make a recommendation to the board on whether conditions in the Minnesota rules 2400, 2703, subpart 6 have been met for the board to review this application. This summary and recommendation will be presented at a public board meeting on January 28th, 2025. At this meeting, the board will vote on whether conditions have been met for the application review. If the board votes yes, then the applicant will be notified and the process to review the application will start. And this will include additional opportunities for public comment. And should that happen, the next public comment period will address the question whether the USS Ward Gun application meets the criteria for removal from the Capitol Mall or not. So these are the next steps that will follow after this public hearing. I will now stop sharing my screen and we will be in the room until 4:30 in case of any additional comments. Thank you.
We have one more online.
Yeah, Tina, I'm going to read the Stephen was unable to get his audio to work, so I'm just going to read it so it's in the record. I'm a member of the small group designing exhibits for the new museum and just wanted to stress how central the USS Ward Gun restored will be to the visitor experience entering the galleries. It will be the first tableau visitors experience with mannequins telling the story of the USS U.S. Navy reservists who served the gun. Thanks, Stephen, for typing that in there. And then I think we can probably go to recess. And then if someone shows up online or in person, we can come back and take their comment.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
I have a question.
Thanks.
Will we stop recording? Let's do that. Yeah.
So stop recording during recess and start again when we have additional comments come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.